Hi, today I want to talk about asking the obvious question. A client the other day reported that he had trouble at work, felt a little rudderless, felt like even though his bosses were telling him he was doing a good job, he didn't quite know how that connected to the big picture, to the mission of the organization, and what was so good about the job he was doing. He asked his peers, and they felt similarly, like they were getting good feedback, but they didn't know the big picture either. So I asked him more questions about that, and it emerged that what he really wanted to know was how his work contributed to the mission of the organization. But he didn't. So I asked him if he asked that question of his management, and he said no. And I asked, how come? And it was a combination of he thought it should be obvious, and so if he didn't know, there was something wrong with him. And so, and then he also thought that it's kind of a silly question to ask, since he was already in the role for a little while. And so I offered to him that it seems like if he didn't know the answer and his peers didn't know the answer, probably the issue was more that no one knew, as opposed to he was the only one who didn't know. And even if he was the only one who didn't know, it might still be worth asking the question. So he said he will do that, and I'm looking forward to hearing how that conversation goes. But the point that it brought for me is twofold. One is that we have an ego check where we feel hesitation, some embarrassment, shame, what have you, about asking a question that might be obvious or too obvious. And when we do that, I think we really limit ourselves in actually learning something that could be a really important piece for us. And the second part is for leadership, that when we praise others and say, good job, thank you very much, it turns out not to be enough. What actually is helpful is something that Dan Pink calls a sense of contribution, and to give people who work for us that sense of knowing how their work fits into the big picture of the organization. They are not privy to our discussions, and things that might be obvious to senior management may not at all be obvious to people who are doing the work. So I hope that's helpful. I'm curious about your experience, whether you've had this issue of asking a question that you thought was too obvious and hesitating. And if that happened, did you ask the question? And if you did, what was the result? Thanks, and have a great day.